What's up, everybody? It is Saturday afternoon. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Saturday, August the 24th, and we are back at Aria. Haven't been here in a while, but I decided to come back here today and jump into the 2-5 game. So I am currently on the list, and we're gonna see if we can't run it up here at Aria. So one thing different about the Aria 2-5 game is it's a little bit deeper. So the cap, I believe, is 1,500, so 300 big blinds at this casino, as opposed to the 100 big blinds that it is at Bellagio. So deeper game, it's going to be more 3-betting, going to be more aggressive, more bluffs. Let's see if we can't get in there and play some good poker, and see if we can't book a win. I will see you guys at the table.
All right, we take our seat at the Aria 2-5 game, and the first thing that I notice right out of the gate is that this is going to be a much, much bigger game. We've got players at the table that are sitting about $4,000 deep, so there's a lot of money on the table. I bought in for 1,000, so just 200 big blinds, and right away we get into the action. So when I first sat down, I'm still getting situated, still getting the camera set up, and I immediately look down at ace, queen of diamonds in middle position. There's a $10 under the gun straddle on. I go ahead and raise it up to $35 pre-flop, and I end up getting 3 callers, and we head off to a flop. A flop that gives us the stone cold nuts. Jack 5-3, all diamonds. Both players out of position check it over to me, and this is a spot in the past where I would have slow played, put in the check, and tried to set a trap. But that is the panic poker of the past. This is the panic poker of the present. I'm going to go ahead and bet this, and I settle on a size of $55. Players tend to be the most call happy on flops. More than any other street, they're more than likely to put in a call on the flop, especially if they have a straight draw, if they've got the king of diamonds, if they have a jack, they're probably going to put in the call here. Unfortunately, in this particular scenario, it does not work out in our favor as everyone folds. But I still like the bet on the flop. We are playing relatively deep, and if we want to get all the money in, we need to start building a pot. You could argue for the check raise, as sometimes I think this type of a board will get stabbed relatively frequently. So I think a check raise may be a good line in this spot as well. But I just elect to go ahead and bet out and take the betting initiative. And unfortunately, it just does not work out for us this time. About 15 minutes goes by, and I look down at Queen Jack of Hearts under the gun, and this is a hand where I should have continued to take the aggressive route, but instead I took a passive line, and it ended up biting me in the butt. I raise it up to $20, and it folds around to a player in the big blind, who, from what I can tell, in the short time I've been at the table, is the worst player at the table. So he puts in the call. We're going heads up, in position, not a bad spot to be in, and better yet, we flop top pair, queen 10 deuce all diamonds. Big blind starts things off with a check. I'm going to go ahead and fire out a continuation bet here in position. I go make it 25 to go, and he pretty quickly puts in the call. The turn is the 10 of hearts, which pairs the board. Big blind checks on this turn, and I think I should continue betting small here on a board pairing turn card, putting pressure on all of his one pair hands. But instead I check back, and we see the 4 of diamonds on the river. He checks again, and I go ahead and check. At this point, I don't think I can beat too much, and sure enough, he shows pocket 5s with a 5 of diamonds, and we end up getting owned here after checking back on a turn card that we should have bet. More suited cards to be played. This time we've got king 9 of spades in the cutoff. It folds around to me, and I go ahead and raise this up. I make it 20 to go. Player on my direct left who is on the button, who's been calling about 90% of hands pre-flop, he puts in the call. He's got a short stack to start things off. He's got about $200-ish behind, so keeping that in mind when we go heads up here to a flop. Flop that's pretty connected, but it gives us top pair with a draw to a straight. It's king, queen, jack, rainbow. I'm going to go ahead and start things off with a check here out of position. I think the button's going to stab pretty frequently, and that is exactly what he does. He bets $25. And don't think there's much to do here other than just calling. I could go ahead and rip it in versus a short stack, but if he does have a bluff here or some sort of a draw, I want to keep those in and just have him blast off on the turn. So I just go ahead and put in the call, and we go to the deuce of hearts on the turn, which is a complete brick. I check one more time, and he pretty much does instantly just go all in for his remaining about $150. I think I can just go ahead and call here with my top pair and my draw to the straight. I block some straights as well here, so I call, and he turns over 10-9 offsuit for the flop straight, so we are pretty much drawing to a chop. We do not get there on the river. Unfortunately, it's just a brick that doesn't change anything, and we end up losing this one here with our flopped top pair against the short stack. Not sure if getting it in on the turn is the best play here. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there any situation here where we can just get away from it? Or would it be better to just go ahead and get it all in on the flop? Either way, we end up losing this one. Not the best outcome. More suited cards to be played. This time we've got the suited big lick on the button, 9-6 of spades. Pretty cards to see in position, and better yet, we see a player in the cutoff who puts in the $5 call, aka he limps into the pot. I'm going to go ahead and raise this up and try to isolate with the player who limped. I make it 25 to go. Small blind, who is our friend who's been calling about 90% of raises pre-flop, the friend that we got into a pot with in the last hand, he puts in the call, spoiling my plans of isolation. The cutoff calls as well, so we're going to go three ways here in position to a flop that we completely whiff. And some of you might have noticed, and I have definitely noticed it, I think this is one of the biggest leaks in my game, is not knowing when or how to fight for some of these multi-way pots in spots where you completely miss. And we don't hit anything on a 7 of clubs, ace of diamonds, jack of spades board. Player in the small blind checks, cutoff checks, and I just go ahead and slow down here and check as well with zero equity on this board. We see the deuce of clubs on the turn, complete brick, but now the small blind decides to lead out. I think he bet for 55 here on the turn. Cutoff puts in the call. I just don't see how we can do anything here other than fold. I think raising would just be suicide into two players here, especially after a bet and a call. And I think calling would be just burning money. So I go ahead and put in the fold. But let's continue on, and let's see what happens here after I fold. Let's see what the river brings, and let's see what these other players would like to do on that river. The river comes down the 5 of spades. Once again, not really changing much on the board. And now the player in the small blind slows down, and he puts in the check. Now the action is back over to the cutoff, who thinks about it for quite some time here, looking like he wants to put in a bet. He's counting out some chips and kind of doing a little chip dance there with his chips, but eventually he just checks it back, and it goes to showdown. None of them want to show their cards. Eventually the small blind does show, and he's got a pocket pair. I think it was tens, and the cutoff just mucks face down. So the small blind takes this one down with his pair. I think we might have missed a bet there on the flop or the turn. Could have potentially got him to fold a hand like pocket tens. Finally, we pick up a non-suited hand. This time it's ace-king offsuit, so a pretty good non-suited hand, if I do say so myself. Action folds around to me, and I go ahead and raise it up. I make it 15 to go, and our friend in the small blind, who we got into with the king-9 suited hand, who's been calling a lot, goes ahead and puts in the call, and the big blind calls as well. So three ways to a flop that gives us top pair, top kicker, ace, 9-3 rainbow. Both players check to me, and I'm going to be firing out a continuation bet here, and I decide to size up a little bit because the player in the small blind is so prone to calling on flops, and that is exactly what he does in the big blind. It pretty much snap folds. So we're going to go to a turn, which is the queen of clubs. I decide to put the small blind all in after he checks. He's only got about another $280-ish left behind, and he snap folds as well. So we don't get any additional value here with our top pair, top kicker. Unfortunate that we couldn't get the small blind to commit more of his chips on that turn card. And just like that, we're back to getting suited cards. This time it's ace, queen of clubs. We are in the under the gun spot, and I go ahead and raise it up. I make it 15 to go. I do end up getting 2 callers here, and we're going to go 3 ways to a flop. And unfortunately, we're going to be out of position in this one, which is no fun. And it's especially not the most fun when you don't end up connecting on the board either, which we do not. We see 7-6-3 with 2 hearts. I start things off with a check. We've got 2 overs, and that's about it. And it ends up checking around, and we see the jack of hearts peel off on the turn, which completes the front door flush. Ends up checking around once again, and the queen of diamonds peels off on the river, which gives us top pair, top kicker, and now the cutoff decides to bet out on this river card for $35. Now, I think I could put in the call here sometimes, but I don't know. Players just like to slow play their flushes, and they like to try to trap people. So I'm not feeling too good with our top pair on the river. He could have also had a hand like, I don't know, Queen Jack or Queen 7 suited or something that hit some funky 2 pair on the river. So not in love with the fold, but don't hate it either. It's just one of those spots where I think calling is probably not going to be the best option too frequently. This is another spot where taking the passive approach hurts me. I've got pocket jacks under the gun. I'm going to raise this up. I make it 15 to go. Probably could be sizing up here a little bit, make it 20 or 25, just because players at this table have been so prone to call. But we end up seeing a 3-bet from a player in middle position who's newer to the table. He's only been here for maybe 10 or 15 minutes prior to this hand. He 3-bets it up to 35, and we get a cold call from a player in the small blind. And I decide to call here as well, which I don't love. I think with a hand as strong as pocket jacks, in early position, with a cold caller, out of position, we should be putting in the 4-bet pretty frequently there. I think the squeeze play is the better play to go with. We go to a flop. The flop gives me an overpair 5-4-2 with 2 diamonds. I'm going to go ahead and check after the small blind checks, and the player in middle position who 3-bet continuation bets here for $65. I'm not loving it, but I also am not going to be folding in a spot like this with an overpair, so I go ahead and put in the call after the small blind folds, and we're going to continue on to a turn card. A turn card that is the ace of clubs, the dreaded ace over our pair, so now we are losing to any of his ace-x hands that 3-bet pre-flop. But after I check, he quickly checks it back, and we see the 6 of hearts on the river. I don't think the 6 of hearts is going to change too much, but I also don't think I can really bet for value here. So I just check to see what he wants to do, and he quickly checks it back. I turn over my pair thinking we're good when he checks it back, but we are not good when he turns over 6-5 offsuit for a rivered 2 pair. Yeah, had I played this one a little bit more aggressively, I think we could have taken this one down pre-flop and just gotten the dead money, but unfortunately my passive play ended up hurting me.
All right, in this next and final hand for this session, I did not capture it on video, so I'm going to have to do the recap this way, and you guys are just going to have to look at me while I do the recap. Apologies. Apologies, you're going to have to see my face for the next couple of minutes. But let's go ahead and get into the hand. All right, so we've got 7-6 of clubs. We are in the under the gun +1 spot. Under the gun +1 player who has been somewhat tight raises it up to 15. I've got 2 players to my left who I perceive as being on the looser passive side, and they're players that I want to get involved in pots with. So I decided to just go ahead and call in this spot. Normally, I think this is a good candidate to 3-bet and try to isolate and get heads up with the under the gun player. But in this particular table, I think it was better to just call and allow the players to my left into the pot, because I think they're going to make some mistakes. And we get our wish when 2 players that I wanted to get involved both put in the call. So we are going to go 4 ways to a flop that gives us 3 of a kind. We see 9-6-6 with 2 spades. The original raiser in the under the gun seat checks, which I would expect him to do quite frequently in a multi-way pot with a lot of his Broadway type hands. So like ace king, ace queen, king queen, king jack, queen 10, jack 10. So I think he just really missed the flop, and he doesn't like the fact that he's against 3 other opponents. And we flopped a strong hand, so I think the best play here is just to go ahead and start getting money in the pot, especially considering that the players to my direct left have been very call happy and have not shown a propensity to fold. So I go ahead and bet out here for $30. The turn brings a queen. I think it was the queen of diamonds or the queen of hearts. It was an offsuit queen. It did not bring in the front door flush. So I think I want to continue to bet here in this spot. Considering this player is just very sticky, he probably called the flop with a lot of pairs, hands like pocket eights, pocket sevens, maybe even a hand as strong as pocket tens would call on this flop. And I know they should 3-bet pre-flop, but a lot of times players at these 2-5 games do not 3-bet hands like pocket tens pre-flop. So I think he can still have hands like that in his range. Maybe even a hand like pocket jacks would just call pre-flop and then call flop. So I think I want to continue to bet and target those specific hands, but that's not what I do. In the moment, I try to lay a trap and I check. I think that's a bad idea. Passive players like this that just like to call too much aren't likely to stab on this particular board, and he does not stab. He checks back. And the river brings another queen, double pairing the board, which is not my favorite card in the deck because he can certainly have some queen X in his range. I don't think he's going to have a ton of it, but he could certainly have some queens. Although I would think he would bet a lot of his queens on the turn when I check to him. So I think he's still going to have a fair amount of pocket pairs like tens, pocket jacks, pocket sevens, pocket eights, hands like that. So I decide to bet out here on this river card. I mean, we have a full house. It can't be too wrong to fire in a bet here. But I think I go a little too large to target those specific hands. I end up betting out $125 here on the river. So the pot was about $140-ish, and I bet $125. I think that's too large to target the range that I'm targeting. I think I run the risk here of really value owning myself and just getting looked up by a queen betting this size. I think the better sizing here would be around $70 to $75 to target that range of pocket pairs to try to get a crying call. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the $125 bet size, but it does put the player into the tank for a good 30 to 45 seconds. He's counting out his calling chips, and I'm praying that he doesn't raise, because if he raises here, obviously it's just going to be a fold. I don't think he's going to be representing anything other than a queen, and I don't see him having a lot of bluffs here either. So yeah, he eventually just puts in the call. So I'd say full house, we turn over our hand, and he nods his head and mucks his cards face down. So maybe he did put in a crying call with one of those pocket pair type hands that we had in his range, and he just didn't believe me when I bet $125. But either way, we take down this nice pot to end the session, and that's going to be the last hand for this episode. So I'll see you guys in the outro. All right, we just finished up our session at 2-5 here at Aria. It's about 8:15 in the PM, and we played for a little over 4 hours, like 4 hours and 10 minutes, something like that. And really was just card dead most of the time. And the hands that I did get involved in, I really couldn't get much going. Just a lot of raise, multi-way pots where I couldn't really fight for the pot. Trying to fight against 3 or 4 opponents is always difficult. And people just weren't folding pre-flop. I mean, I was raising to 20, 25, and still getting 3 or 4 callers, which is usually a sign of a good table, but it can also be really difficult to navigate when you're card dead, which I pretty much was. I was just not connecting with boards, and yeah, that's going to be challenging. So not a great loss or anything. I was in the game for $1,300 and ended up cashing out for $1,015, so a loss of $285. Not the end of the world. Definitely could have played better in some spots. Probably should have 4-bet those pocket jacks. That's one spot where I feel like I definitely missed the mark pre-flop. But that's going to do it for episode 59 of the poker vlog. If you guys liked the episode, make sure to hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel. I know about 90% of you that watch are not subscribed, so take that one little extra second of your day, since you're watching the video, to hit that subscribe button, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out a lot. It really inspires me to make more content is what it does. So please hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, leave a comment below and I will get back to you. And I will see you all in episode 60 of the poker vlog coming up soon. So I will see you then. Take care and good luck at the tables.
Yeah.